From overtime thrillers to dynastic battles, the Stanley Cup Finals is where legends are made and heartbreak is carved into ice. Today I will be ranking the most epic Stanley Cup Finals matchups since the year I was born, 1999. These are series that I have witnessed over the past 26 years, series that I hold near and dear to my heart, those that have shaped my views as a hockey fan. For this video I have 10 series that stand on top of my list. I will break down each one briefly, give my biggest storylines from each one, and which team I feel was more deserving to win even if they didn't. But before we get into this video, I just want to take a moment to pause and appreciate you, the viewers. Thank you to everyone who watches this channel, my videos, and anything that I decide to post on the internet. It's been such a blast over the past 2 years with me taking YouTube more seriously, and the following that we have obtained here on this channel, it's pretty incredible. So to anyone who has ever watched a video of mine in the past, or if this is the first video you've ever watched, if you want to continue supporting me, the best way to do that is to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Again, without you guys, it wouldn't be possible, so thank you so much. But with all that being said, let's get right into this video. At number 10, we have the 2004 matchup between the Tampa Bay Lightning and Calgary Flames. Back in 2004, Tampa and Calgary would compete in one of the more underrated Stanley Cup Finals from the past 25 years. Yes, at that time I was only 6 years old, but to be honest, being a young kid and watching any hockey game was always a blast. And being able to watch reruns of this final might have been my favorite thing once I hit like my teenage years. But with all that aside, this was a war between two teams that couldn't have been more different. Tampa Bay was high-flying, led by Martin St. Louis and Vincent Lecavalier, while Calgary brought grit and goaltending, backstopped by Miikka Kiprusoff and captained by Jarome Iginla. The series went to distance, and Game 6 featured the infamous phantom no-goal call, where many Flames fans would swear that they had the cup winner in overtime, but unfortunately, that's not the way things went. It was forced to a Game 7, and Tampa Bay would ultimately be victorious in this series. Why was this series amazing? Well, if you look back at it and watch all of those games, it was the physicality, Kiprusoff's goaltending, and that Game 7 that made this series an instant classic. If you look back, who I think should have won is probably the Calgary Flames. Whether you agree that was a goal or not, they were clearly the better team, and their goaltending was just so good in that series that you have to feel bad for Kiprusoff. But in the end, it was the Tampa Bay Lightning who came out on top, so hats off to a lot of those legends during that series. Just 2 years later, we would see another United States versus Canada-based franchise matchup, the Edmontonoilers against the Carolina Hurricanes. The Oilers were the 8th seed. Carolina had never won a cup, and that was the biggest narrative of this series. After Dwayne Rollison was injured in Game 1, Edmonton battled with backup goaltending throughout the rest of the series, but still managed to push this one to Game 7. Justin Williams was the empty netter hero that sealed the deal for the Canes, ultimately winning the franchise their one and only Stanley Cup. Why was this one amazing? Well, it was the coming of age for Carolina hockey, and unfortunately for Canada, it was the marking of a long cup drought. But really, it was about the momentum swings in this one, the idea that an 8th seed and them with a backup goalie could potentially win a cup. It was just incredible from Game 1 to Game 7. Realistically, I think Edmonton should have won this series if they had their starting goalie, but you can't go back in time. So for Carolina, great cup win for them, and unfortunately for Canada, one of the cups that could have prevented people from talking about this long drought. Number 8, 2022 Colorado vs. Tampa Bay. 2022, the Tampa Bay Lightning are in their 3rd consecutive Stanley Cup Finals, and after competing against teams like Dallas and Montreal, they were going up against their most difficult task in the Colorado Avalanche, led by Nathan MacKinnon, Mikko Rantanen, Cale Makar, Gabriel Landeskog, and many other talented players. The unstoppable force met the immovable object. Colorado's offensive juggernaut continued to clash with the two-time defending Stanley Cup champions. Cale Makar, Nathan MacKinnon, and the Avs finally broke through years of heartbreak, ending Tampa's dynasty bid, and every game, it had star power, pace, and tension, but overall in the end, Colorado was through and through the better team, earning McKinnon's first cup as an Avalanche. Why was this amazing? Well, both teams were incredibly loaded, and this might have been the fastest paced finals that I've ever watched in my lifetime. But who realistically should have won is the Colorado Avalanche. They were absolutely the better team, loaded from their forward group, their defense, all the way to their goaltending. I felt like this was the best team I've seen in quite some time. The only disappointing thing about this is that we didn't get to see the Colorado Avalanche go to more cup finals. Had they had Gabriel Landeskog healthy and managed to get themselves back into a position that they were in 2022, I feel like we would have been seeing another dynasty created right after Tampa Bay, but that's just not what happened. So good for the Colorado Avalanche. This was an incredible cup finals, and if you haven't watched it, definitely go back onto YouTube and watch some of those games. It was pretty incredible. Number 7, 2003, the New Jersey Devils versus the Anaheim Ducks. Now, as a kid, there was one thing that I really admired about hockey, and that was goaltending. And in this 2003 matchup, I couldn't have gotten a better series. This was a finals that introduced the world to Jean-Sébastien Jaguar's playoff brilliance. The Ducks were a surprise team, but led by Jaguar's ridiculous .945 save percentage, they held their own. Meanwhile, the Devils had Steven Niedermayer, and of course, don't forget, the great Martin Brodeur. Why was this series amazing? Well, it was the coming of age for Anaheim, but mainly this series was about goaltending, especially if you were someone who really appreciated the art of that position. I believe that the Devils should have won this series, but you can't help but feel bad for Jaguar based on his excellent numbers in that one. But truthfully, I just think that the Devils were a better team through and through. So great series in my eyes. It was something I had to rewatch because I was way too young to remember most of it, but still one of the top series from the early 2000s. At number 6, we have the 2024 finals between the Edmonton Oilers and the Florida Panthers. While the rematch is happening right now, let's not forget how incredible last year's finals actually was. Connormcdavid's first finals appearance did not disappoint. However, he was not the one on the winning side. It was in fact the star-packed Panthers who would clutch out a Game 7 victory on home ice after nearly blowing a 3-0 lead in that series. McDavid was truly special during that playoff run, earning the Conn Smythe Award despite not winning the Cup, breaking records throughout his run, and unfortunately he was just met by a Panthers team that was on a revenge tour and loaded from front to back. Connormcdavid now has his very own chance at redemption this year to do what the Panthers did to him, so if history's on his side, we may just get a different story this time around. Why was this one amazing? Well, narratives surrounding the series were pretty incredible. Connormcdavid, the best player in the world, the Panthers getting a chance for revenge. It was some of the best hockey I've seen in years. Who I think should have won is the team that actually won. The Panthers were just so loaded. They had some of the best players in this lineup and still look like the same team they were last year. Who knows how they're getting that done, but it's a fact, man. They're a tough team to beat with the way they play hockey, but Edmonton's getting a chance at revenge this year. Maybe we'll see a different story, but the Panthers in 2024, boy, were they a force. Number 5, the Pittsburgh Penguins versus Detroit Red Wings, but in 2009. A rematch of the 2008 Stanley Cup Finals when the Detroit Red Wings had won their Stanley Cup, only this time around, Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin were on a mission. Not only were they looking to get a win against arguably the best team in the NHL, but also a team that they felt robbed them of their first cup opportunity. Marc-Andre Fleury's final save on Nick Lidstrom in Game 7 sealed the redemption arc and launched the Penguins into what was a potential dynasty. It was in fact tactical hockey with two teams that knew each other all too well. One of the only few years where you see two of the best teams from the start to finish just compete at the highest level. Why was this series amazing? It's a Game 7 rematch between two teams that were in the finals a year ago. You can't make that up. The only thing that could have made this series better is if we got a rubber match a third year. They were clearly the two best teams, and it would have been incredible to see. Who I think should have won, I think the Penguins were the better team in this series. They just had more momentum going for them trying to get revenge, even though I do think Detroit was fantastic. Again, I would have loved to see a third matchup, but this finals, it did not disappoint. Number 4, I have the Boston Bruins versus the Chicago Blackhawks in 2013. Looking back at that year, I think this was the first time I had watched every single Bruins hockey game the entire season. And I know it was cut in half, but still, this was the most memorable year for me as a hockey fan, even though it didn't end the way that I was hoping. Both teams were incredible all season long. Remember, this was the half season caused by the NHL lockout contract disputes, but the Hawks were amidst their dynasty run and were heavy favorites to win the finals, taking the Bruins to 6 and scoring 2 late goals to end Boston's season. While it's not the finish that this young Bruins fan was hoping for, it was still one of the best finals I've watched in my lifetime and still actually holds up to this day. Why was this one amazing? It was the two best teams in the league facing off in an original 6 matchup, where as a Bruins fan who also loved Patrick Kane, I couldn't have asked for a better finals. Who I think should have won, I think the Bruins should have been able to force at least a Game 7, but still I think Chicago would have won. They were just a dominant team that year and were in the midst of their dynasty. So if you haven't watched the 2013 finals, go back and watch it. Trust me, it still holds up very well to this day. At number 3, this is where I have the 2014 finals between the New York Rangers and the Los Angeles Kings. Don't let the 4-1 series conclusion fool you. These games were a lot closer than you think, with the Rangers forcing LA to overtime in a lot of those games. The Kings had survived back-to-back Game 7s to get to this spot and showed incredible resilience. Meanwhile, the Rangers had their best lineup in years, led by Henrik Lundqvist, who was a huge fan favorite league-wide. This was a goalie battle for the ages, with Quick and Lundqvist just exchanging save for save in big points of these games. I remember how late some of these matchups would go, but still I watched every moment just waiting for the Rangers to come out on top because I was rooting so heavily for Lundqvist. While it was short-lived and we only got 5 games between these two incredible teams, never forget the final call of this series. It's forever ingrained in my mind. Why was this one amazing? Triple overtime games, heartbreaking goals, and saves by 2 of the league's best and brightest at the time. Who should have won? While I was rooting for the New York Rangers at the time, I have to admit, the LA Kings were still such a great team and were so fun to watch, and rightfully they deserved to win that series, especially with how they performed throughout that entire playoff run. Still, it was a short-lived finals, but one of the top ones from the decade. At number 2, this is the 2019 Stanley Cup Finals between the Boston Bruins and St. Louis Blues. Talk about an incredible Cinderella story. The Blues were dead last in January, and somehow, thanks to Jordan Binnington, they found themselves in the Cup Finals just a few months later. After a very strong playoff run leading to a finals that saw them face the mighty Bruins with Marchand, Bergeron, Chara, Rask, and Pastrnak, Binnington stood on his head, especially in Game 7 at TD Garden, silencing the Boston crowd and ending a 52-year championship drought for the Blues. Again, heartbreak for this Bruins fan, but it was an electric series to watch. And even though I didn't love the result, you have to tip your cap to that Blues team. It's just an incredible story. Why was this one amazing? It's pretty self-explanatory. It's one of the best underdog stories in NHL history, ending in the most victorious fashion. Who should have won? The Boston Bruins should have won. They choked out that Game 7, and I'm still harboring resentment over it. But again, I got to tip my cap to the Blues, especially Jordan Binnington. I don't know if I've seen a goalie step up like that in a Game 7 since that has happened. So great for the Blues, and still one of the most watched and most entertaining Game 7 final series that I've seen in my lifetime. And at number 1, this is easily my favorite Cup Finals, and probably for a lot of bias reasons, but I have the 2011 Stanley Cup Finals between the Boston Bruins and the Vancouver Canucks. Now come on, you had to expect this. I put all these heartbreaking Bruins losses throughout this complete list, and you didn't expect me to put the 2011 Finals here? You gotta be kidding me. Truthfully though, I actually want to hear from you guys. You let me know. Even if you're not a Bruins fan, do you think that this series was an all-timer? Because rewatching it, it's still so electrifying. But of course, I'm going to be biased, so I can't really tell. So let me know in the comments below. It was pure chaos though. Vancouver had the Sedins, Luongo, and of course the President's Trophy that year. They were through and through way better than the Bruins. But Boston, they had Tim Thomas, who delivered one of the best goalie performances in playoff history. Home teams won the first 6 games until the Bruins exploded in Game 7 at Rogers Arena. The aftermath, riots in Vancouver, and a massive cup drought broken for the Boston faithful. Why was this one amazing? I feel it was like the contrast in styles, if you will. You had Tim Thomas, who was appreciated but wasn't on the level of Luongo, but still put up that historic performance. We got to witness the start of all of Marchand's antics and the crazy nature of that Boston crowd as they screamed Luongo after every goal. It was a series that was completely unforgettable. Who should have won? Boston should have won based off of Thomas's performance, but Vancouver, they were the better team through and through. They had the better forward core, the better defensive core, and of course, their goalie at the time should have played a lot better than Thomas, but in the end, I'm not complaining. Boston got their cup, especially since we didn't get the next two. This one, it felt pretty good. But these are my favorite Stanley Cup finals that have happened during my lifetime. With the Stanley Cup finals happening right now, I thought this would be a fun video to make just to give you guys a little bit more content as we go from game to game to keep you guys entertained with hockey. But let me know your favorite finals of your lifetime. Do you agree with my list? Do you think that some of these should be lower or higher? Let me hear your thoughts in the comments below as always. Again, thank you guys so much for the support here on this channel. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. I also have a few other videos talking about this year's finals, so if you want to check those out after this, be sure to do so. Again, thank you guys for watching. I will see you guys in the next episode.